Scotland's richest man, Sir Tom Hunter, a billionaire who started his business life selling training shoes from the back of a van, has promised to donate more than £1 billion over his lifetime. I asked Sir Tom, who's still only 46, why he'd become a philanthropist.
All I can really say is that it must be something to do with my upbringing in a working-class Scottish mining village where community was very important. My dad was a local grocer, and therefore we worked in that community. We made profit in that community, but my dad was always keen that we put something back into the community. So I'm sure that must have had some impact. I mean, the way it kind of happened for us was that we always did our bit when we were growing our first business, sports division. And we always signed a cheque and sent it off. But that pretty soon became very unfulfilling. Did it make any difference? Was it real? Was it a con? And I think it was my dad who said, look, if this was a business, you would actually sit down and decide what it is you want to do. You don't wait for the phone to ring or the post bag to decide what you're doing in your business life. So why would you do so in your philanthropic life? That's when we began to take it seriously.
When you started off in business and you were selling sportswear, was it ever at the back of your mind that at some point you would stop doing that and you would start to tackle wider problems, wider issues?
No, that was never. I mean, people say they have great plans. You know, when I was first started, I couldn't see beyond the end of the day, never mind a 20-year horizon. I suppose when I sold the business in 1998, I was only 37 years old, had a very large cheque in the bank, but I had nothing to do. So I had to go and re-educate myself into what I was going to do. And basically, I took about 3 years to educate myself and came to the two conclusions that, one, I wanted to continue making money, but two, the motivation and the purpose would be our foundation. I believe we've now got the perfect mix of making money and enjoying that intellectual challenge, but then the money goes to a very important purpose.
Another businessman focusing his energies and his own money on philanthropy is London-based Percy Barnevik, one of Europe's top business executives. He doesn't have a great deal of time for many traditional NGOs or non-governmental organisations and prefers to describe his charity, Hand in Hand, as a company. The tycoon has the ear of business and political leaders. The former Swedish Foreign Trade Minister, Maria Borelius Larsson, works with Mr Barnevik and explained to me how Hand in Hand was working to tackle poverty in southern India.
We are specialists in job creation and self-help solutions among the bottom billion, the poorest people in this world living on less than $1 a day. And what we do is mainly to train very poor, downtrodden women into entrepreneurship and job creation.
So how did Hand in Hand begin?
Hand in Hand began as a very small charity working with child labour about some 20 years ago. And then a very well-known industrialist bumped into this charity. He's called Percy Barnevik, and he's been the head of ABB, one of the world's biggest power and electrical engineering companies. He was the chairman of AstraZeneca. He's still on the board of General Motors. And he brought, I would say, a lot of his business principles into the charity, because you have a lot of charities wanting to work on the smaller scale, 500 people, 600 goats. But we have said that poverty is such a huge problem. We want to show that you can work on 1 million people scale.
And what sort of results have you seen?
We have so far trained more than 300,000 women the last 4 years into entrepreneurship, and they have created more than 160,000 businesses with a rate right now of 650 new businesses per day. So that's an explosion in business creation. And what we do is we train them in entrepreneurship, we train them in finance literacy, we train them in literacy, and we do a lot of hand-holding to help them create sustainable long-term businesses.
The more you look into the new philanthropists, the more you sense that they feel charity is too important to be left to traditional charities. But philanthropy isn't just for the wealthy. Rachel Millward could have been one of the rich, if not the super rich, but she left her career at Goldman Sachs and is now Development Director at the Five Talents charity, which provides loans and business training to people in the world's poorest countries. By the end of this year, it hopes to be supporting 50,000 entrepreneurs, a development that will have an impact on 1 million lives.
Although my job was satisfying and I was working with some absolutely fantastic people, it was a very challenging environment. They're very driven and it's very exciting. I just really felt as though that really this couldn't be it, that really I felt as though I just wanted to have more of a positive impact on real people's lives.
To what extent does your business experience help you when you're now doing your new job?
A lot. And I think that's the funny thing, how sort of life works out, really, because at the beginning I wasn't really thinking that I definitely wanted to, go to work for a microfinance institution. But I think really now, looking back, it was really almost a perfect move in a way. Goldman Sachs gives you an incredible background, how to relate to clients, how to organise yourself, how to be driven and target orientated. And now that translates so beautifully, really, into the NGO world, where I'm now primarily doing fundraising. It's very, very target driven. I am now reaching out to the high net worth individuals and people who are interested in thinking about philanthropically and sort of investing their own money more in that direction. It's really helped me to, I suppose, craft the questions and how to deliver myself when I'm just reaching out to that audience.
Can you describe some of the people that your work actually helps now through microfinancing?
Yes. When I was last in Tanzania, which was in November, I met somebody called Zawadi, who was about the same age as me, so about 36, and she was incredibly poor, had a very sick husband, and up until that point she had no money and was unable to diversify her stall. And so we gave her a small loan of £30, and that enabled her to buy more stall, increase her stock, and subsequently then send her children to school, and she was actually the main income provider. I was just incredibly touched when I went round to their home and I met her husband, who looked incredibly ill, and we were sitting in her very modest home, which was really sort of, as we would know, sort of a mud hut basically. That was really when I felt that I was absolutely doing the right thing, and that I just wanted to try and translate that story as clearly as possible when I came back home, that £30 can make a huge difference to these people.
For some years, one of the buzz phrases in business schools has been corporate social responsibility. The idea that companies should concentrate on more than just taking our money. They should also be forces for social or public good. That can mean helping their own employees who are already engaged in charitable or philanthropic work. Brian Connolly is a pilot for British Airways. When he flies to Kampala in Uganda, he spends the time between flights working in a school for poor and orphan children, and on each flight, courtesy of his employer, he carries school equipment for the Jenny and Jessie School, collected by supporters in Britain.
3 years ago, I realised that there was a link with my daughter's school here in the UK, with a primary school in Kampala. It was set up by a local man, Julius Magezi, and he's been running it on an entirely charitable basis, so really struggling to support about 150 children, many of whom pay small school fees, but there's about 20 orphans as well who need complete support. So when I realised that there was a link already established with the school here in the UK, I thought I could get involved in that. So that's allowed me to really change the kind of thing that I do on that sort of trip. I think for airline crews around the world, obviously there's sometimes opportunities to spend several days in places that we go to, and that can be a great deal of fun. But sitting around a hotel pool for about 20 minutes starts to lose its appeal for me. And I've just found that it's meant that I've been able to just really enjoy doing something very different. And I suppose in the way that many crew are all over the world with British Airways, start to just make a small difference and just help in a little way.
But why do wealthy individuals give their fortunes away? The idea that from those to whom much has been given, much is required is hardly new. But Andrew Carnegie was perhaps the first to suggest that the super-rich had a moral responsibility to give away most of their wealth. Victorian philanthropists didn't always use their money to promote social and financial equality, but they wanted to hold society together so that, in Carnegie's words, the rich and poor could be bound together in harmonious relationship.